Hi everyone, Harvey Cohen here, and this is Selling Made Simple. A little while ago, I posted one of these video programs on YouTube on overcoming objections. Well, today I'd like to talk about one specific objection. That is overcoming it costs too much. If you've ever been in sales, if you've sold anything to anyone for even a short period of time, you have heard that objection. Let's first identify why someone would even say that. Fair enough? To begin with, it could cost too much. In their mind, it's just not worth it. Number two, they may not have the money to be able to pay for it. So that's a different objection because one is, I can't afford it. The other one is, it costs too much. Now, we have to ascertain whether or not when they're saying it costs too much, it's because they have the money but don't think it's worth it, or they don't have the money but would pay for it if in fact they did have the money. So that's important to discover early in the presentation. Let's assume for a moment, though, it isn't because they don't have the money. Let's assume they do have it, but they feel it costs too much. Why? Number one, and as basic as it gets, you can watch a million of these videos, by the way. Everyone's going to talk about value. Building value, you must make sure the client understands that it's worth what it is we're asking the money for. Number two, we have to also prove to ourselves that it's worth it. Do you know that one of the major reasons salespeople fail, and it's true, by the way, is because they don't believe the product is worth what it is they're asking the money for. So if we don't believe it, do you really believe our presentation is going to be as professional or polished as it can be? Do you really believe we can be as passionate as we should be? Do you really believe that we can put that argument out to the point where clients are going to say, wow, you really believe this? If we're not successful in doing that, well, we're going to fail, at least more often than not, unless, of course, the prospect absolutely needs what it is we're talking about. So if they say it costs too much, we have to find out why they feel the way they feel. Now, if you've watched any of my other presentations, you know that it's important to ask questions. Without a shadow of a doubt, we don't know what we don't know. So we have to find out what they know. If we know what they know, and we now know what we know, we can now win this little battle. Now, when I call it a battle, please don't get confused again. It's not a war, it's really and truly a way for us to be able to share our information to the point where they go, wow, you're right, I'm going to give you my money for what you have. So far, so good? Okay. So when they come to us and they say to us, it costs too much, what do we need to find out? All right, some classic questions would be, how much too much? Or how much is it that's cost too much? Whatever variation you want to use on that. How much too much? Now, of course, if they come back and give you a number, it's going to be really easy to overcome that. But if they don't have a number, you're going to be in trouble. Let's first take the point that they give us a number. It costs too much. How much too much? Now, before I continue, I'm going to say this. You could also ask this question. Why do you feel that way? Regardless of the either or question that you're going to be asking, which is, why do you feel that way, or how much too much? Would you agree by asking either of those questions, you are going to be forcing the prospect to do what? That's right, answer it. If you now know what they're thinking, would you agree it's going to be easier to overcome the objection? It makes sense. So we have to be ready. We have to know what we're talking about. Again, let's talk about how much too much. If they come back and give you a dollar figure, let's say, for example, $100 too much. And depending on what it is you're selling, that could be a lot of money. It might not be that much, regardless. If they say it costs too much, well, how much too much? You come back and they come back rather, and they say $100. Now, what are you going to do? You could now say this, and it's a question or a statement rather that has cost more salespeople sales than you could possibly believe. The question is, well, if I could match the price you're looking for, would you buy? Now, without a doubt, that is going to work. Without a doubt, some people will actually say yes. You're controlling the conversation because, yes, you've asked the question. But what have you also just admitted to? I'm going to replay that part. Fair enough? Here we go. They say it costs too much. You say, how much too much? They come back and say, $100. You come back and say, well, if I could match the price that you're looking for, would you buy today? Or some variation of that question. Now, by them hearing that question, admittedly, they can come back and say yes, and you'll get some sales. But in reality, what else have you also admitted to? I'll help you. If you've offered a price of $300 and you now come back and say, how's $200 when they fight with you, have you not admitted you were overcharging to begin with? Have you not admitted that, had you not caught me, Miss Prospect, I would have gotten away with the extra $100? Isn't it possible there may be some thoughts in the prospect's mind that you were in fact trying to rip them off? That's what it suggests. Yes, there's negotiation. I get all of that. But for some folks, you have to admit, some might think, why didn't you offer me that price to begin with without making me fight for it? So with that in mind, rather than giving away the money so quickly, wouldn't it be better if you held on just a little bit longer? Now, before we continue, and again, I've probably put some of these up in previous postings, we have to believe our products are worth what our products are worth. If we don't, we're at a fault to begin with, or a disadvantage. We must believe that what we are selling is worth the money we're asking for it. And if we do that, the passion will come out. So, I've got to look you in the eye, which is what I'm doing right now. And by the way, it's really important that when you do talk to people, you are looking at them right in the eye. That shows sincerity. That shows that you are confident in what you're doing. Look at them in the eye. That's what they're for. Okay, number 2, and very important, when they say it costs too much, and you say how much too much, and they come back and they say $100, rather than discounting, may I suggest you say this: I appreciate you feel it's worth less than what I'm asking, but tell me, Miss Prospect, Mr. Prospect, if you knew it was worth every penny I'm asking, in fact it was worth more than what I'm asking, what would you do? Or you could say, if you knew it was worth to the penny more exactly what I'm asking, you'd get it, wouldn't you? How about this? I'll bet you if I could prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that what I am asking is worth it and more, you'd get it, wouldn't you? What do you think they may come back with? Now, there are some who'll say, no, I won't. And we'll get to those folks another time. What's important is now is to believe that if we do stand our ground and we do come back and we say, if you knew it was worth it beyond a shadow of any doubt, you'd get it, wouldn't you? Don't be surprised if they come back and say, yeah, but how is it worth it? Or, yeah, I would. How are you going to prove it? Wouldn't you agree that once you're at that point, you're that much closer to the sale? And isn't it true if you have your product knowledge and testimonials ready to go, you should be able to overcome that value for money situation on the spot? Wouldn't you agree that if you believe it's worth it, you can get away with this because it should be worth it? The price that you're asking for the product or service that you're selling has been set for a specific reason. And yes, in some cases they might be able to buy it cheaper, but then you have you to talk about and your service to talk about and what you can bring to the table. And if you are real, if you are good, if you do provide service, that is worth something. You've got to believe it. But if we give up too soon, well, what are we saying about ourselves? And what are we saying about our product? If I could prove to you, Miss Prospect, beyond the shadow of any doubt, that it is worth what I'm saying it's worth, what would you do? If they come back and say, well, how are you going to do that? Now, the urge and the desire, ladies and gentlemen, to say, let me tell you all about it is huge, because that's what's been set up for you. You've now asked the question, if I could prove it was worth it, what would you do? They come back and say, well, how is it worth it? The desire for you to explain is huge, but have you got a commitment yet? If you haven't got a commitment, what's the point in telling the story? Would you agree you could be telling stories from today to tomorrow, and if you have no commitment, you have nothing? Get the commitment in advance. Find out first if in fact the story were good, would you buy? And if they say, well, how good is it? You come back and say, well, I appreciate the question, but if I could prove it was worth it, you'd get it, wouldn't you? If they come back and say, yeah, how are you going to prove it? Would you agree you've now got the yeah, now you've got the commitment, now you've got the opportunity to close. Does this make sense? We've got to get that yes before we tell the story. in any live seminar I do, and I do many of them. This is the one point I cannot stress enough. We talk too much. We tell too much information. We've got all this product knowledge we can't wait to spew out. But until you get them to say, I would buy if the story were good, you've got nothing. Well, perhaps that's a slight exaggeration. In some cases, you will have a sale. But wouldn't it be so much nicer if you got the yes up front rather than at the end? Wouldn't it be nice to know they were listening rather than sleeping? And wouldn't it be nice to know you were talking to an open-eared audience rather than someone who was thinking about where they would rather be than with you at the time? Get the commitment. If they're going to say something like, it costs too much, well, how much too much? $100. I appreciate how you feel, but if you knew it were worth it, what would you do? And if they come back and say, I would get it, you're done. All you have to do is prove it. How? With testimonials. How? With previous experiences. How? With the opportunity you can prove how good you are. How? With talking about the experience of the product that you're selling. You talk about that once you get the commitment. Does this make sense? Other things work, but give this a try. You'll be surprised how easy it is to overcome an objection when you get the commitment in advance. Fair enough? By the way, want some great answers to objection handling? I'm proud of this book. It's called Sales Objections Overruled: Answers to Virtually Any Objection You've Ever Heard or Ever Will Hear. I wrote this a little while ago. Sell quite a few of them. It's on my website at www.harveycohen.com under products. And of course, if you have any other questions or comments, I always invite you to email me directly at learntosell@harveycohen.com. So once again, to summarize, the next time they say it costs too much, you come back and say, how much too much? If they come back and give you a dollar amount, instead of giving up so quickly, say to them, I appreciate how you feel. A lot of people feel it costs too much. But tell me, if you knew it was worth it, what would you do? We'll handle another one in the future. Thanks for watching. Look forward to seeing you next time.